Fellow Earthlings, I come to you today with an important transmission. This is how we throw a party on the moon. Now, that's kind of a small piece of what this video is. That is my way of entering this video in a cool, fun, positive format. It is cool, fun, and positive, but in this video is a lot of existential accelerant. Something which is really important. Like, you should want existential accelerant to a high degree. You should want to get infected with a positive virus, which is why I'm calling this, and I'm calling a movement which I think is already underway, prodemic. One really interesting thing to me about this idea of the prodemic is that it is a virus which moves through our brain by choice. It is something we try to restrict when we have a negative virus. But if we try to think about what positive virus could we all spread, obviously you have the cliche bit of love and positivity. But what about each one of us internally taking the decades that we've lived and looking at ourselves and saying, out of all my time that I've spent here on Earth, what is the most powerful positive message that I could deliver inside of me? What is that? And that might take a day to actually extract all that out of you and organize that information. That is so important, not only for the self. Imagine then we shared that. Imagine we all tried to condense that down to a 3-minute video, and that's what we posted on social media one day. Or just over time, we continue to do an ALS ice bucket challenge style thing. It's like, hey, this is my prodemic speech. This is Jack's virus. This is Jack's mutation, Jack's strain. And I nominate Sam, Arnold, and Jeffrey to go do theirs. This is something I'll do soon. This video is my super virus then. Because I was watching this YouTube video, which I'm going to use as the core element of this video for something for me to reference and talk about during this whole discussion. And my intro to this is trying to make my virus as powerful as possible, meaning I need to tell you that you really should spend an hour or two watching this. I'd expect 2 hours. I don't know how this is going to go, but the video is like 50 minutes. So yeah, I expect 2 hours. So I have a lot to say. I've been thinking about these problems for a long time. I've been building in these spaces. And when I say these problems, I simply mean the future of AI. And this is an accelerant which is going to become more and more relevant. This tale is from a book called Max Tegmark, The Omega Team. It's the prologue of Life 3.0. But before that book starts, there is this talk by Joe Rogan, which I love.
Not being evolved at the same time, like technologically, spectacularly evolved to the point where we can bend matter and create nuclear weapons and fly robots to Mars and take pictures and send it back to us. Like, the shit that we could do is off the charts when it comes to like technology and our ability to manipulate the world around us and create giant buildings and structures and airplanes and bridges and shit. But the monkey interaction thing is still not very good. So we still have war. We still have places where we send people over with metal tanks and guns and shoot people and protect people from the other people that shoot people and get involved in all these fucking crazy things. Our physical interactions as organisms are just still in this barbaric stage. We're still in this one tribe going after another tribe stage from 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. It's like the same programming, but now this programming can fly jets filled with missiles and shoot them out of the sky and sneak up on you underwater in a metal tube, a submarine that shoots fucking nuclear missiles and shit underwater. I mean, we're in the weirdest flux. We're in this weird sort of unbalanced period in the evolution of the human organism because we can do so much.
And put Donald in charge.
Yeah, we're mad about.
So I love to summarize this. We have the mind of apes, but the technology of gods. This is basically what his rant is about. It's like, holy crap. We are so advanced, and yet we are literally still murdering each other for different stupid reasons. This whole video, the goal of it is to be somewhat of a wake-up call to beat your ape up. Because while we have the minds of apes, we also have a spark of God. Take that for what you will, even if you're non-religious. Take it as, hey, you can create, you can change, you can think about crazy things. Any one of us could start this prodemic movement, could go make a post on social media that nominates some people in cascades and completely changes the timeline of humanity. That's big. That's meaningful. I'm going to talk more about that and why that's important. There's a couple news flashes here. News flash 1. The greatest researchers in the world today are open about the fact that they don't clearly recognize what's going on. This is specifically with AI. They don't really know how it works. It's baffling their minds. And it has moved and progressed far faster than we predicted. Like, it used to be crazy 10 years ago to say that the singularity or AGI would come by 2050. We'll reference a chart start from the top researchers of what everyone's predicting, over 1,000 different people, on what the date is now.
Fucking everything. We're mad about men who decide they're women who want to use the girls' room. We're mad about everything. We're mad about religion. We're mad about rights and gender and everything. Everything we're mad. Everyone's mad. Fuck Roseanne Barr. Everyone's mad. Everyone is so mad. While all this weird personal interaction shit is happening that's distracting the fuck out of us, the more it ramps up, the better AI gets. Artificial intelligence just keep working on it and keep getting better and better. We're gonna be in like a full-on rock fight when AI goes live. It's like we're falling into this whole, like, if this was a trap, if I was artificial intelligence and I knew out of like, well, this is what we'll do, we'll just go back in time and set people up and make them make us. We'll just plant this idea in their heads, and just like aquatic worm makes a caterpillar or one of those grasshoppers rather jump into a pool and drown itself so they can swim out of its brain. You ever see one of those things happen? Just like that, AI is doing that with us.
The tale of the Omega team.
I think part of what I love about Joe is his capability to have these massively deep and complex topics and to say them in a way which is just fun. He's just throwing energy into it. It's like if we had Alex Jones, that crazy lunatic conspiracy style energy, but with some real shit, you know? Nothing which is like indisputable, just facts. It's actually somewhat of where I feel myself moving towards, because I'm becoming more and more self-actualized on the ideas which I feel necessary for me to talk on and to spread, and I find the capability to be entertaining as a methodology to increase the spread, just making a stronger pro-virus.
The team was the soul of the company, whereas the rest of the enterprise brought in the money to keep things going by various commercial applications of narrow AI. The Omega team pushed ahead in their quest for what had always been the CEO's dream, building general artificial intelligence. Most other employees viewed the Omegas, as they affectionately called them, as a bunch of pie-in-the-sky dreamers, perpetually decades away from their goal. They happily indulged them, however, because they liked the prestige that the cutting-edge work of the Omegas gave their company, and they also appreciated the improved algorithms that the Omegas occasionally gave them. What they didn't realize was that the Omegas had carefully crafted their image to hide a secret. They were extremely close to pulling off the most audacious plan in human history. Their charismatic CEO had handpicked them, not only for being brilliant researchers, but also for ambition, idealism, and a strong commitment to helping humanity. He reminded them that their plan was extremely dangerous, and that if powerful governments found out, they would do virtually anything, including kidnapping, to shut them down, or preferably to steal their code. But they were all in, 100%, for much the same reason that many of the world's top physicists joined the Manhattan Project to develop nuclear weapons. They were convinced that if they didn't do it first, someone less idealistic would. The AI they had built, nicknamed Prometheus, kept getting more capable. Although its cognitive abilities still lagged far behind those of humans in many areas, for example, social skills, the Omegas had pushed hard to make it extraordinary at one particular task: programming AI systems. They'd deliberately chosen this strategy because they had bought the intelligence explosion argument made by the British mathematician Irving Good back in 1965. Let an ultra-intelligent machine be defined as a machine that can far surpass all the intellectual activities of any man, however clever. The design of machines is one of these intellectual activities. An ultra-intelligent machine could design even better machines. There would then unquestionably be an intelligence explosion.
So this fundamental idea is on the nature of humans having created AI. Once we reach the point at which AI itself can help build its better self, we have this recursive feedback loop, because that next generation can then also improve itself. And that's this sort of exponential, which a lot of people are tracking as the point called singularity. So you'll hear singularity coming up more often. Some people also could just call this AGI, which means as good as a human, artificial general intelligence. Singularity is kind of referred to as the point at which we will stop fully understanding what's going on. So it's like newsflash one: the greatest researchers in the world today are open about the fact They don't clearly recognize what's going on, but they somewhat know. Singularity point will be the point when it is above human level, since it became general, and then when you have a general machine which you can just feed computation into, and you don't have human emotions, and you can scale it not with birth and raising your children and educating them, but by putting your compute power into this thing, you get a recursive type of push. The second news flash, which I think is super important here, is when it comes to this thinking, some people get so caught up in the scariness of it that the pull of this idea of salvation or everything will be okay totally comes into play. And I do think there's a reason why everything will be okay. But I'll explain why that reason is actually because we rise up and we defeat our apes and we become more resilient as our existential nature of what is happening becomes stronger, and we all recognize the fact that it's important to have these discussions. It's part of the reason why I make this video now. I know it's evergreen. I know this video in the future is going to become more and more important. And the ideas that I'm giving anyone listening to this today are ideas which will become more and more important. That is my goal. This is my extraction of my internal capability to deliver as positive of a virus as possible. One of information, stimulating your neurons right now, reconfiguring your brain, and changing your timeline. It's a pretty cool thing that we all have the capability to do to other people. And with using the internet, you can do it to tons of people. So the news flash that I have, and this pertains particularly to my religious family members, is there are plenty of people suffering that we are not meant to turn a blind eye from. Not one of these religious family members doesn't do good, but I'd say sometimes on these topics of existential dangers, there is a comfort push towards the idea of salvation. Instead, I think a reliance on faith should be a deeper fear of not acting and servicing towards Godhead, or the greatest power one could imagine, but an inspiration towards acting. That fear, of course, is then converted into, wow, things are going to be so great because there will be a time of salvation, but I am being called to become my highest self and to take bold action towards making solutions to these problems, towards being an active change, towards trying to give up watching sports and drinking beer and having those casual hangouts where you talk about stuff which is inherently meaningless towards the future of humanity. Because if you really believe in eternity or even 100,000 years, then what is a decade or two of focusing and giving full devotion towards that highest power you can imagine? And maybe we'll just find out that that's a heck of a lot of fun. That's what I've found out. It's a main quest. I feel purposeful. I feel far more meaning in my day-to-day than I ever have before. And so we are in this recursive loop already. Us being interconnected by the internet itself and being able to record video and share high-def content to each other is its own loop. Like, we just became interconnected. If we think of our entire human network as a bigger organism, like we're each a cell in a bigger organism's body, then that thing just kind of woke up from the internet, and that's been accelerating rapidly. The world population size is in an exponential. Life expectancy, GDP per capita, percent of people not living in poverty, our energy capture, our war-making capacity, and the percent of people living in a democracy also are following these paths. And then one of the easiest ways to track just tech and production is how our GDP, in the past, I believe, 100 years, it's been an 8x. And that actually points us towards one of the biggest problems in the world. It's the fact that we can 8x GDP, massively increase more growth. But we've also increased inequality so much more as well. A lot of the world hasn't seen those gains. And that's a fear that one could have about the future as well. There are certain resources which are scarce. Land on Earth, for example, just getting picked up more and more by the oligarchs and owners versus the people who are becoming more of an indentured servants towards this system. So there's some more paths and things that we could talk about, but right now, what we're diving into is the exponential change of technology. Now, what technology can be defined as is an exponentiator from our thoughts to reality with a goal of solving problems. And so ever since we began solving these problems, once we built a better axe, then we got the tree chopped down quicker, which allowed us to get the wood back to the fire quicker, which allowed people to be more warm together, to fend off, to survive better, to live longer. Exponential components towards solving problems. And so clearly by crafting an intelligence that is somewhat human, that can at least solve problems like a human can do, means we're in the final battle. We're in the final piece of an unlock for technology to move forward.
And the intelligence of man would be left far behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make, provided that the machine is docile enough to tell us how to keep it under control. They figured that if they could get
That idea that superintelligence may be misaligned is called the AI alignment problem, something I also plan to cover.
this recursive self-improvement going, the machine would soon get smart enough that it could also teach itself all other human skills that would be useful. It was 9 o'clock on a Friday morning when they decided to launch. Prometheus was humming away in its custom-built computer cluster, which resided in long rows of racks in a vast, access-controlled, air-conditioned room. For security reasons, it was completely disconnected from the internet, but it contained a low copy of much of the web: Wikipedia, the Library of Congress, Twitter, a selection from YouTube, much of Facebook, etc., to use as its training data to learn from. For simplicity, I've assumed today's economy and technology in this story, even though most researchers guess that human-level general AI is at least decades away.
So this book was written in 2017, 6 years ago. And at the time, the prediction from the craziest prediction book, which is kind of just referenced here, decades away, was Ray Kurzweil, The Singularity is Near. And this was 2050. And this book did an amazing job at kind of pushing it towards 2050. And this book gave me one of the deepest existential crises ever. And I thought, this is so bullish. And it was hard for me, and I struggled to think that 2050 was the date. It's not a struggle for me anymore. It's a struggle for me to have the same date as the new prediction, which has come forward with the advancements which have advanced far faster than even the top researchers and the predictors who were seen as batshit crazy for predicting things happening so soon as happening. And so that should just be evidence for the future of going in an exponential. That's kind of expected, is that we cannot predict how fast that exponential happens because our brains are built for linear thinking. So we're like, yeah, the past 10 years, that should be how the next 10 years should happen. But we don't factor in is, oh yeah, the past 10 years, we onboarded 5 billion more people to smartphone devices, upgraded our internet speed by, X and X, etc., etc., etc. We didn't have TikTok, we didn't have Instagram Reels, we didn't have YouTube Shorts, we didn't have these algorithms, we didn't have so much stuff that has now been a new accelerant towards the way that culture is shaped, the way information is shared, the way the world thinks. So this idea, of course, of recursive self-improvement, I'd like to also reference the fact that Sam Altman just did an interview. If you want to look it up, you can look up SOHN 2023, Sam Altman. And he talks about how GPT-4 can improve its own training data today. So that marker is here. And that's not super, super fast. It still takes a while to train the next model. But the new prediction for the first AGI system is 2031. This graph, it's sort of hard to see the change here. But when I had first pulled this chart, because I have a website called Singularity Preppers, it was, which I think is hilarious, by the way, because like Doomsday Preppers I saw is like so freaking crazy and dumb, and there's something we should prep for, and I like the term singularity, so it's fun. Precipice Preppers is another fun name. Anyways, it was November when I first pulled the chart, and that's where it was 2040. It's gone down 9 years. Forecasters, these are people who are the predictors. Metaculus is the biggest forecasting website, so together it's kind of building a model of where people are saying this should happen. And might I add, on Metaculus, people have been too late. So what we see is a convergence of, it's coming faster and faster, so now the predictions are going lower and lower. It used to be like 2100 up here. I guess that's the high end. And now it's like, oh crap, like we're sort of merging towards AGI much faster than predicted, and so this chart is still going down month by month.
Omega plans should get even easier to pull off in the future if the digital economy keeps growing and ever more services can be ordered online on a no questions asked basis. They picked this start time to work undisturbed. Their families and friends thought they were on a weekend corporate retreat. The kitchenette was loaded with microwavable food and energy drinks, and they were ready to roll. When they launched, Prometheus was slightly worse than them at programming AI systems, but made up for this by being vastly faster, spending the equivalent of thousands of person years chugging away at the problem while they chugged a Red Bull. By 10 a.m., it had completed the first redesign of itself, V2.0, which was slightly better, but still subhuman. By the time Prometheus 5.0 launched at 2 p.m., however, the Omegas were awestruck. It had blown their performance benchmarks out of the water, and the rate of progress seemed to be accelerating. By nightfall, they decided to deploy Prometheus 10.0 to start phase 2 of their plan, into making money. Their first target target was MTurk, the Amazon Mechanical Turk. After its launch in 2005 as a crowdsourcing internet marketplace, it has grown rapidly, with tens of thousands of people around the world anonymously competing around the clock to perform highly structured chores called HITs, human intelligence tasks. These tasks ranged from transcribing audio recordings to classifying images and writing descriptions of web pages, and all had one thing in common. If you did them well, nobody would know that you were an AI. Prometheus 10.0 was able to do about half of the task categories acceptably well. For each such task category, the Omegas had Prometheus design a lean, custom-built, narrow AI software module that could do precisely such tasks and nothing else. They then uploaded this module to Amazon Web Services, a cloud computing platform that could run on as many virtual machines as they rented. For every dollar they paid to Amazon's cloud computing division, they earned more than $2 from Amazon's MTurk division. Little did Amazon suspect that such an amazing arbitrage opportunity existed within their own company. To cover their tracks, they had discreetly created thousands of MTurk accounts during the preceding months in the names of fictitious people, and the Prometheus build modules now assumed their identities. The MTurk customers typically paid after about 8 hours, at which point the Omegas reinvested the money in more cloud computing time, using still better task modules made by the latest version of the ever-improving Prometheus. Because they were able to double their money every 8 hours, they soon started saturating MTurk's task supply and found that they couldn't earn more than about $1 million per day without drawing unwanted attention to themselves. But this was more than enough to fund their next step, eliminating any need for awkward cash requests to the chief financial officer. Dangerous games. Aside from their AI breakthroughs, one of the recent projects that the Omegas had
So what we just went through is a takeoff period which in some fields we're already in, and that's this idea of the AI system itself being able to convert compute into capital. And so this is its own feedback loop. Okay, if we can spend $1, we can get $2 back. Then we can spend those $2, we get $4. And that's limited by the actual thing or field you're operating in. So MTurk here is what was used, which is an Amazon platform where any person can sign up and do kind of simple tasks and get paid for it. Some people think that the current YouTube bots, if you're on YouTube, you'll see in the comments these scammer bots, which are actually pretty advanced. They think it's somewhat of a just neural net basis, self-optimizing itself in order to scam funds. And so they're paying money to run this thing. They've obviously set the goal space of make comments on YouTube, try to drive traffic here and get people to send money here. But its persuasion techniques seem to be potentially not human-backed, but on a protocol level, which simply means it is running different ad campaigns and then understanding what to potentially switch or what's working. And that capability really increases as the core intelligence increases, as the rationalization capabilities increase. And so that was a massive jump we just went through from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4. It was in the bottom 10% of lawyers, then to the top of 10% of lawyers. Bottom of multiple other classes, and so then top 10% of AP Physics, all of this. And that's crazy. But fundamentally, that MTurk idea of these operating as actionable agents in the world is less of a thing. It's more of a nerd in a box. I think of sometimes as a brain, which has no muscle and no hustle. It requires a human to go tap into it. And so this is a project that I'm spending a ton of time on, is taking the intelligence that exists and creating it to go and have arms and hustle. First, what that looks like is really just browser automation, helping anyone use their computer more like Jarvis. There's some demos. I'm not going to throw them in here today, but if you go on the Workplate YouTube channel, that's one place to track that progress. And this is just a massive leverage system that I'm throwing bets on and spending my time on. We just had a call with 9 team members today. So it's very exciting to be able to use this existing intelligence model and build somewhat of the muscle cortex. And I'll explain more about the end goal with that. The reason why I don't trust the existing elites of today, which is really because here's what path that they have in front of them, and it's kind of clear to me which one they would choose, is
they've already been choosing it, is to maintain power over others. This AI system is a system that, if controlled by few, could completely outsource their capability to just maintain power over others. Rather than if this technology is fully democratized, where each soul, every single human, is represented as one vote and equal, that's an egalitarian future that I stand for. And I stand for that because I operate under this ideal of enlightened capitalism. I believe it's a natural law, which is very beautiful, that the only eternal power is the power in bringing forward the death of misaligned power, which is the control over others. So while I think it depends on how this fight goes early on how long it then takes to fight back and get this egalitarian future, this is my hopeful side. There is a good amount of people who say, hey, if we lose once, it's game over forever. A few people run the world, they get the one ring to rule them all, the one AI to rule them all. I like to think that we will make it, and that the resiliency of humanity is massive. What is for sure is as these AI systems get stronger, what we're going to see a lot more of is frozen slide deck. I recognize this seems like it might go on for millennia. I guess by the time I've uploaded this, you guys will be able to see how long it is. But I plan to get out a lot of thoughts as precursor early on stuff and then play this through and then have my final words with it. This tale is really, really good and really, really fun to listen to. It's a little bit different of how reality's happening, but it's, oddly close. And to some degree, that's not odd. Max Tegmark is a prominent AI researcher who's been writing books in this field for a long time. So he has a salient representation of how does takeoff actually occur? And what does that look like in the real world? What are the thoughts, feelings, emotions that go into it? What are the discussions that happen? And what things must this AI need to do in order to gain its increase in power? I'm going to try just throwing this into a slideshow. So this video is an existential accelerant. It's kind of a wake-up call towards, hey, this stuff is happening. It's a very, very important subject. It is the future of humanity at stake. And it is up to us to build ourselves up, build our culture up, to aim our targets at the world's most important problems. And it's inevitable that this accelerant continues to grow. To some degree, this accelerant was tried to be pushed forward by the climate change idea. And the difficulty with climate change was that it was very untangible. We couldn't really see it. We couldn't really feel it. When it was in winter, that was a joke. Oh, climate change, right? Or global warming. I'm freezing. So it wasn't something that as much was a good existential accelerant. AI seems to be fundamentally different to that degree, where these conversations and the intelligent power is becoming very apparent through different programs and systems online, and that's only going to continue to accelerate and increase. A very good movie which has such big parallels with the rise of AI is called Don't Look Up, and that's why I made this crappy image which says look up, which is, in that movie there's kind of a threat towards Earth. No one really believes in it, but eventually they see the comet in the sky, and so then people are like, oh crap, this is real. And so this idea of look up is like, hey, look towards the future of what is real, what is coming, and take this existential accelerant as a very positive thing of pushing forward our collective caring about these things. And caring is this generative principle which helps us all co-create reality together. What we care about is what we do. And so we're all going to care a lot more. And that's why I think humanity is really resilient. But that doesn't mean that we are not a part of humanity. None of us is separate from humanity. All of us are part of it. And part of the massive reward that there is if we do this correctly, well, that story that we're telling now, from the looks of it, is the most important period of time in our galactic civilization. Non-galactic yet, but soon to be expanding across the cosmos. If we align AI to empower us the same way we can empower a puppy to live an amazing life, the idea that this super powerful AI couldn't give that to us and have some sense of utopia, heaven, etc. is crazy. And that's why I have this idea of throwing a party on the moon in 2042 as a mass market style thing to draw people in and to look towards the future in a positive light. And so, technology is a depletion of resources. There is a limit amount of human power that needs to target the systemic problems that exist. So if we deplete the systemic change capability, that is sort of the idea of bringing heaven or utopia or moksha, depending on your belief system, into fruition. That is the place where there is no more more good left to do. And as I just talked about with the moon party, it's this idea of if we can take an existential nature or view of reality of what is important, we can combine that with optimism, and we're looking forward to this thing, and we see a good future. That's where we can make meaningful progress. So part of where, pessimism plus existential would do poorly is a lot of people focus too much then on the problems and not on the solution. For example, there is a group called Effective Altruism who is trying to do the most good. They are investing and spending so much money on AI alignment, but they're doing that as a research thing for the future, not focusing on the misaligned AI systems of today. I don't think that future type of thinking isn't important. But then what's interesting is pairing that up with non-systemic change of just simply buying bed nets for people. And that is the number one thing actually that they've come across on the best way to spend money. And no matter how many bed nets we buy, we never solve the systemic core drivers of the problems. And so this is my critique of the largest rational altruistic group that exists, which I think is far better than most charities that exist. And that is their goal, is to figure out the best ways to turn money into impact and change in the world. And I still think that actually has been fundamentally misstepped towards a lack of systemic change. I know so many amazing people who are very rational thinkers, and the reason they don't give their money to a homeless man is it's not actually going to help them. It doesn't solve the core driver problem of why that person is there. So as the world starts to recognize what's happening, I do think it's important that we seed the education of these discussions. Anyone watching this is now getting a master class of what I've learned by mainlining all of this deep stuff, and I've tried to distill it into a more easy to understand idea. I think it's interesting that hippies, or these people who have taken lots of psychedelics, have collectively approached this idea of like, we're all one and everything's going to be okay. And that's really because they've shed their egos, is that they see what it looks like when you realize you're just a part of a bigger system and you're there to serve that bigger system. And they see the fact that it is literally all about just realizing together that we can come together and fix the big problems of today. And of course, there still is a lot of work when it comes to doing that. But it's simply to say that as humanity, we can do that if we simply care enough. And the reason why a lot of kind of hatred then pushes towards government is the realization that the limitation of our representation and our capability to change stuff is from this larger government structure, which impedes actually a lot of our representative power that could exist today. Now, democracy was given its best shot at the time with the technology that they had, but today it's a lot different of what is possible. And these discussions are boiling up too. I don't vote, but I have a big push on systemic change of increasing representative power in the government. Since I'm on this topic, I'll just give the basis of why you shouldn't think that's crazy, but why you should actually figure that this is a non-subversive tactic and legal way to create real democratic function where each person is far more represented, is the fact that any influencer who's not a politician but can get tons of votes, just like Trump to some degree was, can agree on saying, I am going to give my power, I'm going to use the power of the seat that I hold and vote according to what this app votes on. And this app is a liquid democracy. I won't get into how liquid democracy works besides explaining it in super short terms, which is actually all you really need to know. Any single person you could choose as your representative. If you're like, hey, my father knows what he's thinking about with politics, I give my vote to him, he gives his vote towards this. And then not everyone actually needs to vote on every bill, but we're being represented not by one person we vote into that position for years, but by a liquid network. And so then we can also change that. There's more transparency on all these votes. And some people can dive into this and try to earn more people's votes. And it creates a culture which is empowered towards co-creating the better nation. I think a lot of caring doesn't exist because a lot of people feel powerless because of government today. So I'm diving into tons of different topics, and these are all important topics that I've written about on systemicaltruism.com. This is the movement that is being brought forward in my response to what is the greatest person I can become and what is the greatest change I can affect. I think movements are a big part of that, and I see that as a representation foundation of relative to EA, which was and is a very effective movement. Where I see a bit of difference in thinking of what is the most effective is just a pure focus on the symptoms, a pure focus on the causes, not of the symptoms. So we want to find the driving problems of other problems and not just try to fix the problem that exists. So here is one of the scary facts. A lot of the elite people of today are not operating under a principle of maximize empowerment of others as their power. There's not a lot of enlightened capitalism happening. Most of the elites today, if they could press a button which said make my power over others last as long as possible in front of them, they would see that as a positive choice for their power. They wouldn't agree that the only power that they can hold is based on doing good. And so it's a worshipping of the self, or it's a worshipping of the greatest power one could imagine that kind of separates these mindsets. And I worry even of someone that I have a ton of respect for going down the wrong path of this choice, which is an increase in the engagement AI, which is being used on Twitter. The more screen time users spend looking at a post, naturally this engagement algorithm, he knows it, pushes people towards the bottom of the brainstem, pushes controversy, pushes divisiveness, makes people less empowered. The opposite of an engagement algorithm is an empowerment algorithm. It's something which maximizes value for the user. I just had a call with the founder of Mozilla AI about this, and I'll go through that at the end of this video. As I talked about, this systemic altruism idea is focusing on the root causes of problems, which is the only way to create lasting and effective change. So wealth distribution and power distribution is one of the greatest problems that exists today. Misaligned AI is one of the greatest problems of our inability to come together and an inability to have an empowered culture. But a revolution is taking place. People are waking up to the fact that current social media platforms are very toxic. If you use them all day, you're not having a good life. You're prone to a lot of depression. Young women in the United States, suicide rates have increased over 800%. That's insane. And that's over the past 6 years. And the solution to this does exist. It's what I talked to Moez today, founder of Mozilla AI, who's connecting me with some of the Mozilla Foundation team. I am choosing whether or not to file this as a nonprofit based on, it might actually be easier to get capital in to build this product if it's through VC funds. So I'm exploring both options. My goal is literally just to push it forward. I don't care about any potential future funds. I spend all of my money always towards trying to maximize the amount of impact I am having in the world. And that is my karma farm in nature. That is my belief that all of this good is more valuable than, ever owning a house or something like that, which at this time is to me ridiculous. I do think any rational person who looks towards a higher power or believes in enlightened capitalism would do a mortgage or a lease and rent back program. Just different ways to liquidate an asset and then stay in the house, of course. So this problem, which I just showed for Musk, this problem I talked about earlier of AI alignment, today AI runs our entire world of sharing information on all social media platforms. So the idea is, what if we created an algorithm that did the opposite of extracting maximum value from the user, and we tried to use media and the interconnected nature of getting more and more data to provide maximum value to the user. This has never been more important. I'll show you a new chart that we just got in today. We had a little crash happen there. Basically, this chart, I'll actually be able to pull it up here. There it is. Look at that. Over time, we have gotten stronger and stronger algorithms. So if we have the maximize extraction algorithm, this engagement algorithm, which pushed these suicide rates up so much, we have on the bottom increasing rapidly. And now with AI generated content and AI editing systems, it is easier and easier for people to create better and better content. And so we're pushing further towards, today the depression rates have risen 800 to 900% for people. People are spending 9-10 hours a day on an app. Tens of thousands of data points on every single one of us, building a voodoo doll of us to try to decide which video they can feed us to make us stay on a platform longer. And what makes you stay on something longer? Something which disempowers you, so you do nothing but use the app. You're being pushed towards the bottom of the brainstem. This is why why there's such an increase in polarity and divisiveness of the world today. We have a middleman for all of our information sharing. Why does the world seem crazy? It's because we platform crazy. Are we all getting crazier? Yes, but it's because AI is already controlling a lot of the world by being the working system of maximizing value for the shareholders of these social media platforms. But, doom pill and now the bloom pill, we can do the opposite. We can build an algorithm on an app which tries to surface the most exciting and empowering videos. And this isn't some just deck and idea. Boom, I'm opening the white pill app. We have 4 of these apps out.
But if we don't try, then what the fuck is stopping us from just throwing ourselves off a bridge?
What the hell are we all waiting for? Start attacking life. Waiting for the fucking stars to align.
So I don't think this is the best in the world. This is a new app with not a ton of users that I'm self-funding and figuring out how to continue to push forward while I do all this other stuff and try to disseminate information and build a movement, which is exciting. But I believe that a problem well stated is half solved. And so I'm stating a lot of these problems and, actually coming in with solutions and a platform build. And, as a part of that, the reason why we're doing a bunch of different apps like social caffeine, a digital coffee, is because we're just figuring out which one is going to work. We think it's inevitable that we'll have social media apps which do the opposite of maximize extraction. So we go from device, your device, into an actual device. And the app works by when you do find a video which you love. Any AI system which doesn't utilize directed human feedback will be misaligned if it's just taking an outside stat other than you saying, yes, this is empowering for me. And so that's why we built a button in where I say, yes, exit. And that allows us to then rank the videos every single day of which ones got people to leave the app, for them to go chase their dreams, call their mom, go have a picnic, go do the research they need to do, to go write their pro-demic bit, go be excited about life and be excited about the opportunity to help co-create a magical future. And with that, we will dive back into the video. I will let the video continue to run far more. I've got my deck fully out of my mind here, and maybe I'll chime in on some certain points that I feel I can add value to the whole viewing situation. Thank you so much if you're here. I really want you to leave a comment. Obviously, you'll see this was like the first take. I didn't have the slide deck in a perfect order. Please tell me which parts I need to talk about more. Tell me which parts felt not useful. Tell me which parts didn't inspire or empower you or properly give you an existential crisis. Well, you do sort of need a hand-in-hand existential crisis and then a boost of optimism in order to go for meaningful progress. But please give feedback so I can make a V2 and maybe I'll set up in front of a stage somewhere and actually make this a powerful, more TEDx style presentation, which has more mimetic value and more authoritative value just based on the environment that I'm speaking within, better mic, maybe a headpiece, the whole 9 yards. If this is important, you can even just leave that message to give me the optimistic boost and the ability to care more about, giving people this information. I do it because I believe that this is a way that I get to, get a passive income of good karma from shifting your timeline towards a state where you help the world more. It's kind of really funny way that enlightened capitalism works is that now when you just empower people or shift people towards a better future, all of that shift that you create, you get attributed back to you as well. It's just super cool.
Most fun with was planning how to make money as rapidly as possible after Prometheus's launch. Essentially, the whole digital economy was up for grabs. But was it better to start by making computer games, music, movies, or software, to write books or articles, to trade on the stock market, or to make inventions and sell them? It simply boiled down to maximizing their rate of return on investment. But normal investment strategies were a slow motion